Have you ever made a decision that felt so right in your heart, but the world around you made you question everything? At 42, I thought I had figured out most of life's puzzles. I had a corner office in downtown Seattle, a mortgage on a cozy craftsman house in Queen, and enough savings to feel secure. But there was one piece missing from my carefully constructed life: a family. The biological clock isn't just a saying when you're staring down your 40s. It's a constant, rhythmic reminder that time is slipping away. So I made a choice that would change everything. I decided to become a mother, with or without a partner. What I didn't expect was that this decision, born from love and hope, would cost me the family I already had. This is the story of how I lost my parents and found my real family. It's about the unexpected man who walked into my life when I needed him most, and the lesson that sometimes the people who are supposed to love us unconditionally are the ones who teach us what conditional love really means. But before we begin, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us where you're listening from. The fertility clinic smelled like antiseptic and hope. I sat in the waiting room, my hands folded in my lap, watching couples hold hands and whisper to each other. I was alone, but I wasn't lonely. I was determined. The journey to this moment had been long and complicated. 2 years of therapy to process my fear of never becoming a mother. Countless conversations with Sarah, my best friend since college, who had listened patiently as I wrestled with this decision. Sleepless nights spent researching single motherhood, reading forums, and calculating costs. There had been men in my life, good men even. David, the architect I dated for 3 years in my 30s, who wanted to focus on his career before thinking about children. By the time he was ready, I wasn't sure I wanted to wait any longer. Then there was Marcus, the divorced father of 2, who I'd met at a work conference. He was kind and understanding, but his custody battles and his children's resistance to me dating their father had made things complicated. We'd ended it amicably, but I'd realized I was using these relationships as excuses to avoid the real question. What did I want? I wanted to be a mother. I wanted it with an intensity that surprised me, a yearning that had grown stronger with each passing birthday. I'd spent so much of my 20s and 30s building my career, climbing the corporate ladder at Jensen and Associates, that I'd somehow assumed motherhood would just happen. When it didn't, I had to make a choice: wait for the perfect circumstances, or create my own path. Olivia Martinez. The nurse called my name, and I stood on legs that felt steadier than they had in months. Dr. Richardson had been my OB/GYN for 8 years. She knew my history, the relationships that hadn't worked out, the promotions that had consumed my 30s, the gradual realization that I might never find the one, but that didn't mean I had to give up on being a mother. She'd been the one to suggest this path when I'd broken down in her office 6 months ago, sobbing about another friend's pregnancy announcement. "Are you sure about this, Olivia?" she asked, not for the first time. "Single motherhood is challenging, especially at your age." "I've been sure for 2 years," I replied, and I meant it. "I have a stable job, a support system, and more love to give than I know what to do with." The process was clinical but profound. Choosing a sperm donor felt surreal, reducing a future father to a list of characteristics: height, eye color, education, medical history. I spent weeks reading profiles, looking for someone who felt right. I chose donor number 4738, a musician with a master's degree who loved hiking and had written that he wanted to help create families. His baby photos showed a sweet smile, and something about his essay about the importance of music in child development resonated with me. It felt like the right choice. The first attempt didn't work. Neither did the second. By the 3rd month, I was beginning to doubt myself, wondering if this was a sign that I wasn't meant to be a mother. But Dr. Richardson encouraged me to try one more time. "Sometimes it just takes time," she said kindly. "Your body, your heart, they need to align." 3 months later, I was pregnant. I called my parents from the clinic parking lot, my hands shaking as I dialed their number in Phoenix. I'd practiced this conversation 100 times, but my heart was still racing. My mother answered on the 2nd ring. "Mom, I have news," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm pregnant." The silence stretched, so long I thought the call had dropped. "Olivia." My mother's voice was careful, measured. "Who's the father?" I took a deep breath. "There isn't one." "Well, there is, but—" "Mom, I used a sperm donor. I'm going to be a single mother. Another silence. I could hear my father's voice in the background, asking what was wrong. My mother's muffled response, then the sound of the phone being handed over. Your father wants to talk to you. My dad's voice was cold when he came on the line. Olivia, what you're describing isn't natural. It's not what God intended. Dad, I'm 42. I want to be a mother. This is my choice. And it's the wrong choice, he said flatly. A child needs a father. What you're doing is selfish. I tried to explain. I told him about the years of hoping, the relationships that hadn't worked out, the deep longing I felt to nurture a child. I told him about my financial stability, my support system, my readiness to be a mother. You're being stubborn, he said. You always were. You think you can just force life to fit your timeline. I'm not forcing anything, I said, my voice rising. I'm making a choice based on what I want and what I'm capable of providing. And what about what the child needs? My mother had taken the phone back. What about growing up without a father? Plenty of children grow up without fathers and turn out fine, I said. This baby will be loved, wanted, and cared for. Isn't that what matters? The conversation ended badly. I sat in my car, crying, one hand on my still flat stomach. I had expected surprise, maybe concern, but not this outright rejection. I had hoped that their love for me would overcome their disapproval of my choices. I was wrong. Pregnancy at 42 is not for the faint of heart. Every doctor's appointment came with warnings about risks, complications, and the need for constant monitoring. I threw myself into preparing for motherhood with the same intensity I'd brought to my career in marketing. The first trimester was brutal. Morning sickness that lasted all day, exhaustion that made me fall asleep at my desk, and the constant anxiety that comes with being labeled a geriatric pregnancy. I hated that term. It made me feel ancient and fragile, neither of which I was. My boss, Rebecca, was understanding but concerned. Take all the time you need for appointments, she said. But I need to know you're committed to this campaign. The Peterson account was the biggest client we'd landed in years, and I was the lead strategist. I assured her I could handle both, but privately, I wondered if I was being naive. How do you balance a high-pressure career with preparing for motherhood, especially when you're doing it alone? I read every parenting book, took every class, and converted my home office into a nursery. The walls were painted a soft yellow, gender-neutral and sunny. I spent hours assembling the crib, determined to do everything myself. I hung framed photos of my parents, hoping that by the time the baby arrived, they would have come around. They didn't. My mother called once a month, conversations that felt like walking on eggshells. She asked about my health, but never about the baby. She didn't ask about nursery preparations or baby names. It was as if she was pretending the pregnancy wasn't happening. How are you feeling? She'd ask. Tired, but good. The baby's been moving a lot lately. And work. She'd always change the subject when I mentioned the baby. My father didn't call at all. I had friends who were supportive. My college roommate Sarah drove up from Portland twice to help with nursery preparations, and my coworkers threw me a beautiful baby shower. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, an elderly woman who lived next door, started leaving homemade soups on my doorstep with little notes about pregnancy nutrition. These small kindnesses kept me going, but the absence of my parents felt like a constant ache. I catch myself reaching for the phone to call them when I felt the baby kick for the first time, or when I learned it was a boy, or when I finally decided on a name. Each time, I'd remember the coldness in their voices and put the phone down. The loneliness was overwhelming sometimes. I'd lie in bed at night, hands on my growing belly, talking to my unborn son about his grandparents. They're going to love you, I'd whisper. They just need time to understand. At 7 months pregnant, I received an email from my mother. The subject line read, "Difficult conversation. Olivia, your father and I have talked extensively about your situation. We cannot support your decision to bring a child into the world without a father. Until you come to your senses about the importance of traditional family values, we think it's best if we don't have contact. We hope you'll reconsider these choices. We're praying for you and hope you'll make the right decision. Love, Mom." I read the email 3 times before the words sank in. They were disowning me, and by extension, they were disowning my unborn child. The phrase, "make the right decision," felt particularly cruel. What exactly were they suggesting I do at 7 months pregnant? I called Sarah, sobbing. "They're not worth your tears," she said fiercely. "Any grandparent who would reject their grandchild doesn't deserve to know that child." She was right, but it didn't make the pain any less real. That night, I sat in the nursery, surrounded by tiny clothes and soft blankets, and I made a promise to my unborn son. "I will love you enough for all of us," I whispered. "You will never doubt that you are wanted." The next morning, I wrote back to my mother. "Mom, I'm sorry you feel this way. I love you both, and I hope someday you'll meet your grandson. His name is Gabriel, and he's going to be an amazing little boy. When you're ready to be part of his life, we'll be here. Love, Olivia." I never heard back. Gabriel was born on a rainy Tuesday in March, after 18 hours of labor that felt like a lifetime. The moment they placed him in my arms, every doubt, every fear, every moment of loneliness disappeared. He was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, and my eyes looking back at me with such trust it took my breath away. "Hello, little one," I whispered. "I'm your mom." Sarah was there for the birth, holding my hand through the worst contractions and crying happy tears when Gabriel finally arrived. She was the first person to hold him after me, and I knew he'd have at least one aunt who would love him unconditionally. "He's beautiful, Liv," she whispered, cradling him carefully. "He looks just like you." The first weeks were a blur of sleepless nights, endless feedings, and the particular exhaustion that comes with being solely responsible for another human being. I had arranged for 3 months of maternity leave, and I was grateful for every day of it. But single motherhood was harder than I'd imagined. There was no one to hand the baby to when I needed a shower, no one to share the 3 a.m. feedings, no one to reassure me when Gabriel cried inconsolably and I couldn't figure out why. I developed a new respect for every single parent who had ever walked this path. My coworkers were supportive in their own ways. Rebecca sent flowers and a generous gift card for baby supplies. The office threw me a small welcome back when you're ready party, complete with pictures of Gabriel that I'd shared. But underneath the congratulations, I sensed some judgment. Comments about how brave I was, how independent, in a tone that suggested they thought I was also a little crazy. Mrs. Chun continued to be a godsend. She'd knock on my door in the evenings, carrying containers of soup and offering to hold Gabriel while I ate. She'd lived through raising 4 children, and her calm presence was exactly what I needed. "First baby always hardest," she'd say in her accented English. "But you're doing good job. Baby healthy, happy. That's what matters." Gabriel was 6 weeks old when I first saw Daniel. I was in the grocery store at 10 p.m., one of those desperate runs that new mothers make when they realize they're out of diapers and formula. I'd been living on coffee and whatever I could eat one-handed, and I was starting to feel like I was losing my mind. Gabriel was fussing in his car seat, and I was struggling to navigate the cart with one hand while trying to calm him with the other. "Excuse me," a voice said behind me. "Do you need help?" I turned to see a man about my age, with kind eyes and graying temples. He was wearing scrubs, and I noticed a hospital ID badge clipped to his shirt that read, "Daniel Torres, RN Pediatrics." "I'm fine," I said automatically, then realized I was clearly not fine. Gabriel's crying had escalated to a full wail, and I was on the verge of tears myself. Other shoppers were starting to stare, and I felt like I was failing at the most basic level of motherhood. "I'm a pediatric nurse," he said gently. "Mind if I try something?" I nodded, too exhausted to be proud. He carefully lifted Gabriel from the car seat and held him against his chest, swaying slightly and humming softly. Within minutes, Gabriel had quieted, his tiny fist curled around Daniel's scrub shirt. "Magic touch," I said, impressed despite myself. He smiled. 20 years of practice. "I'm Daniel, by the way. Olivia. And this is Gabriel." "Beautiful baby," he said, and I could tell he meant it. "How old?" 6 weeks. And 6 weeks of barely sleeping. Daniel laughed. "It gets easier. I promise. The first few months are survival mode, but around 3 months, babies start to develop more predictable patterns." We stood there for a moment, Gabriel peaceful in a stranger's arms, and I felt something I hadn't experienced in months, a moment of peace. Daniel had an easy confidence with Gabriel that spoke of real experience, not just theoretical knowledge. "Would you like to get coffee sometime?" Daniel asked, carefully transferring Gabriel back to me. I know a place that's very baby-friendly. And I promise I won't judge you if you fall asleep in your latte. I hesitated. Dating was the furthest thing from my mind. I was barely keeping up with being a mother, and I couldn't imagine adding the complexity of a relationship to my life. But something about Daniel's easy confidence with Gabriel, his genuine kindness, made me want to say yes. I'd like that, I said. He wrote his number on a receipt from his pocket. Text me when you're ready. No pressure. As I watched him walk away, I realized I was smiling for the first time in weeks. Our first coffee date was at a small cafe in Fremont that Daniel had recommended. He was right. It was baby-friendly, with a relaxed atmosphere and baristas who cooed over Gabriel without making me feel like I was disrupting everyone's morning. So, Daniel said, settling into the chair across from me, tell me about yourself. Besides being Gabriel's mom, what do you do? I told him about my job in marketing, my house in Queen, and my life before Gabriel. He listened intently, asking thoughtful questions and making me laugh with stories from the pediatric ward. There was something refreshing about talking to an adult who wasn't constantly checking their phone or rushing to get somewhere. What about you? I asked. Kids of your own? His expression shifted slightly, and I immediately regretted the question. I was married for 15 years. We tried for kids, but it didn't happen. The fertility treatments, the disappointments, the failed adoptions, it put too much strain on our marriage. We divorced 3 years ago. I'm sorry, I said and meant it. It's okay. Well, no, it's not okay, but it's life. Sometimes things don't work out the way we planned. He looked at Gabriel, who was sleeping peacefully in his stroller. But sometimes beautiful things happen anyway. Over the next few weeks, we started seeing each other regularly. Daniel would come over in the evenings after his shifts, bringing takeout and an extra pair of hands. He was a natural with Gabriel, and watching them together made my heart do things I thought it had forgotten how to do. You don't have to keep coming over, I told him one evening after he'd spent an hour walking Gabriel around the living room to calm his colic. I know I don't have to, he said. I want to, unless you don't want me to. The truth was, I was starting to depend on him in ways that scared me. Not just for the help with Gabriel, but for the conversation, the companionship, the way he made me feel less alone in the world. I want you too, I admitted. One evening, about 2 months after we'd started dating, Daniel was feeding Gabriel while I finally got to eat a warm meal. It was domestic and comfortable in a way that felt both foreign and familiar. Can I ask you something? Daniel said, carefully holding the bottle at the right angle. Of course. Your parents, you've mentioned them a few times, but they never visit. Are they okay with this? He gestured vaguely at our little family scene. I set down my fork. I'd been dreading this conversation, but Daniel deserved honesty. They're not okay with Gabriel, I said quietly. They think I was wrong to have him without a father. They've basically cut us out of their lives. Daniel stopped feeding Gabriel and looked at me directly. That's their loss, he said firmly. Gabriel is lucky to have you as his mother. Even though he doesn't have a father, Daniel was quiet for a long moment. He has you. And if they'll let me, he has me too. Biology doesn't make a family, Olivia. Love does. It was the first time either of us had used the word love, even indirectly. The weight of it hung in the air between us. Daniel, I started, but he shook his head. I know it's soon. I know this is complicated, but I've never felt more sure of anything in my life. I love you and I love Gabriel. I want to be part of this. I looked at this man who had appeared in my life at exactly the right moment, who had shown up every day for months, who held my son like he was precious. I love you too, I whispered. That night, after Gabriel was asleep, Daniel stayed. Not just for dinner, but for the night. For the first time since Gabriel's birth, I didn't wake up alone to handle the 3 a.m. feeding. Daniel was there, warming a bottle while I changed a diaper, working as a team in the quiet intimacy of early morning parenthood. This is nice, I said, watching him expertly burp Gabriel. It is, he agreed. I could get used to this. Even the sleep deprivation. He smiled. Especially the sleep deprivation. It means I'm where I want to be. As Gabriel grew from an infant to a toddler, Daniel became more than just my boyfriend. He became Gabriel's father figure. He was there for first steps, first words, and first tantrums. He changed diapers, read bedtime stories, and somehow made Gabriel laugh even during the most difficult teething phases. The transition wasn't always smooth. There were nights when Gabriel would cry for hours, and Daniel and I would take turns walking him around the house, both of us exhausted and frustrated. There were arguments about parenting styles. Daniel was more laid back, while I tended to worry about every little thing. But we learned to communicate, to support each other, to function as a team. We moved in together when Gabriel was 8 months old. Daniel's apartment was closer to the hospital, but my house had the nursery and the backyard. The decision was easy. He moved in with us, and suddenly my house felt like a home. Daniel's books mixed with mine on the shelves, his coffee mug found a place next to mine in the kitchen, and Gabriel's toys were scattered throughout every room. "Dada," Gabriel said one morning, reaching for Daniel from his high chair. I froze. We'd never talked about what Gabriel should call Daniel. The word hung in the air between us, loaded with meaning and possibility. "Is that okay?" Daniel asked me quietly. I looked at this man who had chosen us, who had shown up every day for months, who loved Gabriel like his own. "More than okay," I said. Work became more manageable with Daniel's help. He could take Gabriel to daycare on the mornings when I had early meetings, and he was always available for emergency pickups when Gabriel was sick. My colleagues began to see us as a family unit, inviting both of us to office parties and asking about the baby in a way that felt natural and inclusive. Rebecca, my boss, pulled me aside one day after a particularly successful presentation. "You seem settled," she said. "Happier. This Daniel must be good for you." "He is," I said. "He's good for both of us." "I have to ask, are you planning to have more children?" "I just need to know for planning purposes." It was a question I'd been avoiding, even in my own mind. Gabriel was already more than I dared to hope for. But the idea of having a child with Daniel, of growing our family together, was starting to feel less like a dream and more like a possibility. "Maybe," I said. "Someday." We were planning Gabriel's first birthday party when my mother called. I hadn't spoken to either of my parents in over a year, and seeing her name on my phone screen made my heart race. "Olivia." Her voice was hesitant. "How are you?" "I'm fine, Mom. We're fine. I've been thinking about you. About the baby." "Gabriel," I said firmly. "His name is Gabriel." "Gabriel," she repeated, and I could hear her testing the name on her tongue. Is he healthy?" "He's perfect," I said. "He's walking, he's starting to talk, he's happy." There was a pause. I saw Sarah's Facebook post about his birthday party. "He looks like you did when you were little." I felt a flicker of hope. Sarah had been posting pictures of Gabriel with my permission, knowing that my parents might see them. It was a small bridge, but maybe it was enough. "Would you like to meet him?" I asked, my heart pounding. Another pause. "Your father isn't ready for that." "What about you, Mom? Are you ready?" "I don't know," she said honestly. "I'm trying to understand your choices." "My choices brought me the best thing that ever happened to me," I said. "Gabriel is loved, Mom. He's surrounded by people who adore him. But he doesn't have a father." "Actually, he does," I said. "Daniel has been in his life since he was 6 weeks old. He's more of a father to Gabriel than biology could ever make someone." I told her about Daniel, about how he'd supported us, about how Gabriel lit up whenever he came home from work. I told her about the man who had chosen to love us both, who had stepped into our lives and made us whole. "I'd like to meet him," she said finally. "This Daniel. And Gabriel. And Gabriel." After we hung up, I sat in the kitchen, staring at my phone. Daniel found me there 20 minutes later, still processing what had just happened. "Everything okay?" he asked, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "My mother called," I said. "She wants to meet you. And Gabriel." He was quiet for a moment. "How do you feel about that?" "Terrified," I admitted. "Hopeful." "Angry." All at the same time. "We don't have to if you're not ready." "I think I am ready. I think Gabriel deserves to know his grandmother, even if his grandfather isn't ready to know him." Daniel turned me around to face him. "What do you need from me?" "Just be yourself. Be the man who loves us. That's all." The weeks leading up to my mother's visit were filled with nervous energy. I cleaned the house obsessively, bought new clothes for Gabriel, and rehearsed conversations in my head. Daniel was patient with my anxiety, reassuring me when I worried that my mother would judge our unconventional family. She's coming because she wants to, he reminded me. That's already a big step. My mother came to visit 3 weeks later. She flew in from Phoenix alone. My father still wasn't ready, she said, but she needed to see for herself. I was nervous as I picked her up from the airport. It had been almost 2 years since we'd seen each other, and so much had changed. I wasn't the same woman who had called her from the fertility clinic parking lot. She looked older, more fragile than I remembered. The harsh Arizona sun had deepened the lines around her eyes, and her hair was more gray than brown now. But when she saw me approaching in the terminal, her face lit up with relief and something that looked like regret. "Olivia," she said, and her voice broke a little. "You look wonderful." "Thanks, Mom." I hugged her, and for a moment, we were just mother and daughter again, before all the hurt and disappointment. Gabriel was napping when we got home, and Daniel was at work. My mother looked around the house, taking in the toys scattered across the living room, the photos on the mantel, the evidence of a life fully lived. She stopped at a picture of Gabriel's first birthday party, Daniel holding him while Gabriel smashed cake with his tiny hands, both of them laughing. "It's beautiful," she said, and I could hear the surprise in her voice. "It feels like a real home." "It is a real home, Mom." She picked up another photo, Gabriel in Daniel's arms on Christmas morning, both wearing matching pajamas that Sarah had given them as a joke. "He really loves him, doesn't he? This Daniel." "More than anything," I said. "He's the father Gabriel was meant to have." Gabriel woke up from his nap grumpy and clingy, the way toddlers do. I picked him up, and he buried his face in my shoulder, peeking at my mother with curious eyes. "Gabriel," I said softly, "this is Grandma." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "He's beautiful, Olivia. He looks just like you when you were little." Same eyes, same stubborn chin. Gabriel studied her with the serious expression he gave all strangers, then suddenly smiled and reached for her. My mother took him carefully as if he might break. "Hi, sweetheart," she whispered. "I'm your grandma. I've been waiting so long to meet you." Gabriel babbled something that sounded like conversation and patted her cheek with his chubby hand. My mother laughed through her tears. "He's perfect," she said. "Absolutely perfect." We spent the afternoon getting reacquainted. Gabriel warmed up to my mother quickly, showing off his latest skills, stacking blocks, pointing at pictures and books, and his newest accomplishment, walking up and down the hallway while holding onto the wall. My mother was enchanted by everything he did. "Tell me about him," she said while Gabriel played with his toys. "What's he like?" "He's curious about everything," I said. "He loves music. Daniel plays guitar for him sometimes, and Gabriel tries to sing along. He's fearless, always climbing on things he shouldn't. But he's also gentle. He's never met a dog he didn't want to pet." "He sounds wonderful." "He is. He's everything I hoped for and more." Daniel came home an hour later to find my mother on the floor, building blocks with Gabriel while I made dinner. He paused in the doorway, assessing the situation with the careful eye of someone who worked with families in crisis. "You must be Daniel," my mother said, standing up and brushing off her jeans. "I'm Carol, Olivia's mother." Daniel extended his hand. "It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Martinez. Please call me Carol." She looked at him carefully, taking in his easy manner with Gabriel, who had immediately toddled over to him with arms raised. "Olivia tells me you're a nurse." "Pediatric nurse," he confirmed, scooping Gabriel up. "I work at Seattle Children's Hospital." "And you've been part of Gabriel's life since he was very young?" "Since he was 6 weeks old," Daniel said, settling Gabriel on his hip. "Best thing that ever happened to me, meeting these two." My mother watched as Gabriel immediately started babbling about his day to Daniel, using the complicated toddler language that only Daniel and I could understand. Daniel listened seriously, responding with appropriate enthusiasm about blocks and books and grandmas. "Dada," Gabriel said, patting Daniel's cheek just as he had done to my mother earlier. My mother looked at me with new understanding. "He calls him Dada. Daniel is his father in every way that matters," I said. That evening, after Gabriel was in bed, the three of us sat on the back porch with glasses of wine. My mother was quieter than usual, thoughtful. The Seattle evening was mild, and we could hear Gabriel's sound machine through the open window. "I owe you an apology," she said finally. "Both of you. I was wrong to judge your choices, Olivia. I was wrong to turn my back on you when you needed support." Mom! No, let me finish. I was so focused on what I thought a family should look like that I almost missed what a family actually is. She looked at Daniel. You chose them. You chose to love them and protect them and be there for them. That's what family is. Daniel reached for my hand. They chose me too. I'm the lucky one. Your father. My mother started, then stopped. She took a sip of wine and tried again. Your father is stubborn. He may never come around. But I don't want to miss any more of Gabriel's life. Or yours. You don't have to, I said. You're always welcome here. We talked until late that night. My mother told us about her life in Phoenix, about the loneliness she'd felt after cutting us off, about the dreams she'd had about meeting Gabriel. She talked about my father's pride, his inability to admit he might have been wrong. He asks about you, she said. He won't admit it, but he does. He saw the pictures Sarah posted, and I caught him staring at one of Gabriel for a long time. Maybe someday, I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. Maybe. But I'm here now, and I want to be part of this beautiful family you've created. My mother stayed for a week. She read to Gabriel every morning, helped with meals, and insisted on doing laundry while Daniel and I were at work. She and Daniel developed an easy rapport, bonding over their shared love for Gabriel and their mutual commitment to supporting me. On her last night, she pulled me aside while Daniel was giving Gabriel his bath. I'm proud of you, she said. I should have said that 2 years ago, but I'm saying it now. You made a brave choice, and you've created something beautiful. Thank you, Mom. That means everything to me. Daniel is a good man. Hold on to him. I plan to. 6 months later, Daniel proposed. He did it simply, in our backyard while Gabriel played in a sandbox. No grand gestures, no elaborate planning, just a quiet moment between the three of us and a question that felt like the most natural thing in the world. Will you marry me? He asked, pulling out a simple solitaire ring that caught the afternoon light. Will you let me be your family officially? I said yes, of course. Gabriel clapped his hands, not understanding the significance, but sensing that something important was happening. Dada happy, he announced, and we all laughed. We married in our backyard the following spring, with Gabriel as our ring bearer and Sarah as my maid of honor. My mother was there, crying happy tears and taking dozens of photos. She'd convinced my father to send a card, not an endorsement, exactly, but a small step toward reconciliation. Daniel's parents flew in from Sacramento. They were warm, welcoming people who had accepted Gabriel as their grandson from the moment Daniel told them about us. His father walked me down the aisle, and his mother cried as much as mine did. As we exchanged vows, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. 3 years ago, I was a single woman desperate to become a mother. Now I was a wife, a mother, and part of a family that looked nothing like what I'd imagined but was more beautiful than anything I could have planned. I promised to love Gabriel as my own, Daniel said during his vows, and to show him every day what it means to be chosen. The reception was small but perfect. Gabriel charmed everyone, dancing with his new grandfather and falling asleep in my mother's arms as the evening wound down. Sarah gave a toast that made everyone cry, talking about the courage it takes to create your own path and the beauty of love that transcends convention. To Olivia and Daniel, she said, raising her glass, who prove that the best families are the ones we choose. Gabriel is 5 now, and he calls Daniel Daddy, without any confusion or hesitation. Daniel legally adopted him 2 years ago, and Gabriel's birth certificate now lists both of us as his parents. We're expecting our second child, a daughter due in December. Gabriel is beyond excited to be a big brother, constantly talking to my belly and making plans for all the things he'll teach his little sister. My mother visits every few months, and she's transformed into the grandmother I always hoped she'd be. She sends Gabriel packages filled with books and toys, and she FaceTimes him weekly to read stories and hear about his adventures in kindergarten. She's already started knitting blankets for the baby, and Gabriel has chosen the colors. Pink and purple, like a princess, he insists. The relationship between my mother and Daniel has blossomed into something beautiful. She calls him Mijo now, and he started including her in Father's Day celebrations, saying she's earned the right to be honored for helping raise Gabriel from afar. She cried the first time Gabriel gave her a Mother's Day card that he'd made at school. My father still hasn't met Gabriel, and I've made peace with that. It's his loss, not ours. Some people are limited by their own fears and prejudices, and that's a choice they have to live with. My mother tells me he asks about us sometimes, that he keeps the photos she shows him in a drawer in his desk. Maybe someday he'll find the courage to overcome his pride. Maybe not. Either way, Gabriel has more love in his life than any child could need. Daniel's parents have embraced their role as Gabriel's grandparents with enthusiasm. Grandpa Torres taught Gabriel to fish last summer, and Grandma Torres has been teaching him Spanish through video calls. Gabriel now switches between languages with the ease that only children possess, calling Daniel Papa just as often as Daddy. Work has evolved too. When Gabriel started school, I was promoted to creative director at the agency. Rebecca, now a close friend as well as my boss, has become Gabriel's honorary aunt. She never had children of her own, but she's claimed Gabriel as her nephew and spoils him accordingly. The office has become like an extended family, with coworkers who ask about Gabriel's school plays and soccer games with genuine interest. I've learned that family isn't about biology or convention. It's about showing up, day after day, with love and commitment. It's about choosing each other, again and again, through the mundane moments and the extraordinary ones. Daniel chose us when we were just a single mother and her baby. My mother chose us when she decided to see past her own expectations. Gabriel's teachers, our neighbors, our friends, they all chose to see us as a complete family worthy of respect and inclusion. The fertility clinic where Gabriel's journey began has become a place I visit voluntarily now, not as a patient, but as a volunteer counselor for other single women considering the same path. I share my story, the challenges and the joys, the unexpected ways that families can form and grow. What if no one accepts us? One woman asked me recently, her hands folded protectively over her still flat stomach. Then you make new friends. I told her. You find your tribe. Love attracts love, and children need that more than they need convention. Gabriel doesn't know that his conception was unconventional. He doesn't know that some people think families like ours are wrong. What he knows is that he's loved deeply, protected fiercely, and chosen completely. He knows that Mommy and Daddy love each other and love him, and that his little sister is coming soon. He knows that Grandma Carol calls every Sunday, and that Grandpa and Grandma Torres are teaching him to speak Spanish. He knows that love comes in many forms, and that family is defined by commitment, not by chance. Recently, he asked me where babies come from. I gave him the age-appropriate explanation about mommies and daddies, but then he surprised me. But where did I come from? You and Daddy weren't together when I was born. I took a deep breath, realizing this was an important moment. You came from love, I told him. I loved you so much before you were even born that I made sure you would exist. And then Daddy loved us both, so much that he chose to be your father. Gabriel considered this for a moment. So I was extra wanted. The most wanted little boy in the whole world, I assured him. Cool, he said, and went back to his coloring. The family I dreamed of 20 years ago looked nothing like the one I have now. I had imagined a traditional path, marriage first, then children with biological connections and conventional timelines. But this family, built on choice rather than obligation, on love rather than tradition, is more beautiful than anything I could have imagined. Sometimes the best gifts come in unexpected packages. Sometimes the people who are meant to be your family find you when you need them most. And sometimes the courage to create the life you want is the greatest gift you can give yourself and the people you love. Daniel is in the kitchen now, making Gabriel's lunch for school tomorrow while Gabriel helps by supervising from his stool at the counter. I can hear them talking about tomorrow's show and tell, where Gabriel plans to share the ultrasound picture of his little sister. Tell them she's the size of a cantaloupe now, Daniel suggests. A cantaloupe? Gabriel giggles. That's so weird. I watch them through the doorway, my hand resting on my growing belly, and I'm overwhelmed by gratitude. This beautiful, chaotic, perfectly imperfect life we've built together. This family that exists because we chose each other every single day. My phone buzzes with a text from my mother. Can't wait to meet my granddaughter. Gabriel's going to be the best big brother. And from Sarah, dinner this weekend. The boys want to show Gabriel their new video game. And from Mrs. Chun next door, made extra soup today. We'll leave on porch. This is what family looks like. Not perfect, not traditional, but real and loving in ours. The family we choose is often stronger than the family we're born into. And in the end, that's the most important lesson of all. Love multiplies when it's shared, grows when it's nurtured, and creates something beautiful when people are brave enough to choose each other. Gabriel runs into the living room, his face bright with excitement. "Mommy, Daddy says I can help pick out baby sister's middle name." "That's right," I say, pulling him onto my lap. "What do you think?" "Something that sounds like music," he says seriously. "Because she's going to love music like Daddy and me." I look at Daniel, who's appeared in the doorway with flower in his hair and love in his eyes, and I know that our daughter will indeed be surrounded by music. The music of laughter, of bedtime stories, of Sunday morning pancakes, of a family that chose each other and never looked back. This is our symphony, and it's the most beautiful song I've ever heard. If you like this story, leave your opinion in the comments, and of course, leave a like and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Big hug and see you soon.